Welcome to day 138 of the New Way. About a week later, Peter, John, and James, Jesus' three closest friends, went with Jesus to pray together on a mountain. As Jesus was praying, something amazing happened. I'll read Matthew 17, 1 through 9. After 6 days, Jesus took with him Peter, James, and John, the brother of James, and led them up a high mountain by themselves. There he was transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became as white as the light. Just then there appeared before them Moses and Elijah, talking with Jesus. Peter said to Jesus, "Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, I will put up 3 shelters, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." While he was still speaking, a bright cloud covered them, and a voice from the cloud said, "This is my Son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased. Listen to him." When the disciples heard this, they fell face down to the ground, terrified. But Jesus came and touched them. "Get up," he said. "Don't be afraid." When they looked up, they saw no one except Jesus. As they were coming down the mountain, Jesus instructed them, "Don't tell anyone what you have seen until the Son of Man has been raised from the dead." And let's look at Mark's version in Mark 9, 2 through 10. After 6 days, Jesus took Peter, James, and John with him and led them up a high mountain where they were all alone. There he was transfigured before them. His clothes became dazzling white, whiter than anyone in the world could bleach them. And there appeared before them Elijah and Moses, who were talking with Jesus. Peter said to Jesus, "Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us put up 3 shelters, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He did not know what to say. They were so frightened. Then a cloud appeared and covered them, and a voice came from the cloud, "This is my Son, whom I love. Listen to him." Suddenly, when they looked around, they no longer saw anyone with them except Jesus. As they were coming down the mountain, Jesus gave them orders not to tell anyone what they had seen until the Son of Man had risen from the dead. They kept the matter to themselves, discussing what rising from the dead meant. And Luke's version in Luke 9, 28 through 36. About 8 days after Jesus said this, he took Peter, John, and James with him and went up onto a mountain to pray. As he was praying, the appearance of his face changed, and his clothes became as bright as a flash of lightning. 2 men, Moses and Elijah, appeared in glorious splendor, talking with Jesus. They spoke about his departure, which he was about to bring to fulfillment at Jerusalem. Peter and his companions were very sleepy, but when they became fully awake, they saw his glory and the 2 men standing with him. As the men were leaving Jesus, Peter said to him, "Master, it is good for us to be here. Let us put up 3 shelters, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He did not know what he was saying. While he was speaking, a cloud appeared and covered them, and they were afraid as they entered the cloud. A voice came from the cloud saying, "This is my Son, whom I have chosen. Listen to him." When the voice had spoken, they found that Jesus was alone. The disciples kept this to themselves and did not tell anyone at that time what they had seen. This event is called the Mount of Transfiguration. Can you break down that word and see why it is named that way? Transfiguration, where Jesus' figure or formed changed, or the word trans. It was only a temporary change, but Peter and James and John got to see his heavenly form before anyone else. It would have been pretty cool to be there, don't you think? Now remember that we've mentioned that the Jews called their scripture the law and the prophets. At this special meeting, Moses came to represent the law. He was the one who wrote down the 600 laws that God gave to the Jews so that they would realize their need for a Messiah. Elijah was there to represent the prophets. Some people consider him the greatest of the Jewish prophets. The prophets continually preached to prepare the people for their Messiah. Here we see them ministering to Jesus as he was preparing to fulfill both. What were they talking about? Luke tells us in Luke 9:31, they spoke about his departure, which he was about to bring to fulfillment at Jerusalem. Now Peter suggested that they just build homes and stay right there on the mountain, and a voice spoke to the three of them from a cloud. Tomorrow we'll do some research to see if we can determine for sure who was speaking from that cloud, although I'm pretty sure that you and I can guess. In his service, Dale.